Hi, everyone. I want to talk to you today about the tips and trends of 2025 and whether you're preparing for your childbirth in the right way. In the description, it explains the no's and the yeses of this. And briefly, it's very simple. We have, throughout time, throughout place, throughout history, throughout all of our humanity, there is a global truth. There's no way to know what your birth is going to be like. It's as simple as that. There is no way to know what your birth is going to be like. But that's followed by a sentence that says, therefore, there's nothing you can do to prepare for it. Now, what was curious about that was when I first gave birth in 1970, and that dates me, everybody in the United States was taking Lamaze classes. And Lamaze classes were geared toward low risk women. So the families I worked with, which were medically high risk women, didn't feel that they were really included in the philosophy. But millions of us went to the Lamaze classes, and many went to Bradley classes. So that great global truth is no way to know what your birth is going to be like was followed by, therefore, there's no way you can really prepare for the birth. And when the skills-based childbirth trend of the 50s to the mid-70s was happening in the United States, we got rid of that second part. There was this way that low-risk women could prepare for birth, and fathers were coming into birth because we as women didn't want to be left alone. We wanted a good birth coach. But the goals of the natural birth movement was to achieve a natural birth, pain-free labor without medical care. And the fact was, in the United States back then, most of us were going to the hospital. We lacked choices, and we had the standards of care, the assessments, monitoring procedures of that day. And so we prepared for birth by learning simple breathing skills, simple relaxation skills. Our husbands timed contractions. They huffed and puffed with us. But I want to tell you, multiple millions of us achieved this goal to reduce the second childbirth truth, which was suffering. So my generation of families that gave birth at that time felt empowered by their birth because we used some level of skills. So back to the question, are you preparing for your birth? Wrong. Since the 80s, the natural birth movement shifted their viewpoint. It was great that they shifted their viewpoint to saying women should have more choices. Now, you have to understand, those of us living in developed countries are incredibly privileged, and we feel very entitled to choices. 99% of the women in the world totally lack choices around childbirth. And the reality is, as soon as choices began to be the way we should approach birth, we discovered that choices change. And for women with medical high risks, often we just lack choices, or depending where you lived in the United States. But what the natural birth movement also did was to dismiss the need for skills. Simple statements, cows and cats aren't taught to birth. Women don't need to birth somehow because we've always done it. We always know how to do it. Now, the mothers and fathers that developed the birthing better skills knew that there was something wrong with that message. And it was, because 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth one way or another. But underlying that is what is important for you to know. Is your baby's birth important to you? Well, yeah, no kidding. And you have to do the activity of birthing your baby, no matter how it unfolds, whether you like it or hate it. Whether you have the birth you want or whether you have the birth you can't even imagine you could have had. You have to do the activity. So when you're preparing for the birth of your baby, if you're relying on the first global truth, well, there's no way to know what my birth's going to be like, so therefore I'm not going to do dick. Or you're relying on the childbirth trend that got put in place in the 80s, which was, you know what kind of birth you want, therefore write a birth plan, tell your care provider, and they should give you the birth you want. to which 99.9% of women after the birth will tell you it was nothing like I imagined. So the fact is, can you write a birth plan as a way to prepare for birth? Well, the answer is so yes and no. You can talk about who you want, whether you want to eat, get up, if there's a water tub there, take a shower. But you'll never know what your birth is going to be like until it's over with. But 100% you have to do the activity. So when Birthing Better families started to develop the Birthing Better skills in the early 1970s, we did so because the Lamaze and the Bradley skills were the first skills-based method, and they were just immature. They did the best they could, and they focused on low-risk women to achieve three goals. I don't know. Do they make sense? Natural birth? Sure. Do you know what the word natural means? Does it mean it's easy, it's good, it just pops out, or you suffer and you have a tragedy? It can mean both. And because it's undefined, the assumption by the natural birth movement is you can birth by the rice paddy and get back up and work. But the reality is natural birth is what happens after pregnancy. We all give birth. Now, some people would say to me, but a cesarean isn't a natural birth. It's a birth. And you have to do the activity of it. And the birth of your baby is important to you. So where would you use skills if you end up with a cesarean, whether it's a non-laboring one or an unplanned one? Well, if it's a planned one, you prepare your body for birth. You learn the breath, communication, touch skills, the soft skills. You work together to have more intimacy about this important activity that's going to be done. And then you use your skills on the way to the hospital while you wait around to be prepped and during the surgery. And also afterwards when you're recovering and having discomfort. It's the same way with an unplanned one. If you've labored and used your skills and something's occurring and you're going to have a surgical birth, just keep using your skills. Why do you want to use your skills? And what Birthing Better families were all about was the continuity of skilled self. That meant we recognize that as adults, we came into pregnancy, both of us being skilled in lots of ways. And then we just sort of fall into pregnancy, sort of this black hole that we get sucked into. Men feel left behind. Women feel as though something's taken over our bodies, which it has. And then somehow birth, and somehow we get spit out as parents and expected to become skilled to parent. It's easier if you've had previous kids, but if it's your first birth or you didn't feel confident parenting, you remember that. So we wanted a continuity of skilled self. So we, mothers and fathers, equally developed the Birthing Better skills. In fact, the Pregnancy Academy was primarily developed by dads because they would say, makes sense. At 24 weeks, we can begin to prepare her body for birth and learn the skills together. And during the birth, we can use skills together, and that makes us feel really good. But by 24 weeks, it's 6 months into pregnancy, and we feel left behind. I mean, we always tell this story because it's, it's a clear story. A couple, but later in life, married 15 years, decide to have a kid, wanted to go to a special place so they could conceive. They went to a special place, they conceived right away, and 3 weeks later, she's got her head in the toilet bowl, vomiting up, and saying to the guy, "Don't touch me, I don't want to have sex." And the guy's going, "What the hell happened?" Well, what happened was she got pregnant, and women give up their lives from that moment on. Sometimes we love doing that. Sometimes we're ambivalent. Sometimes we don't want to do that. But the reality is, unless you're in a place where you can have a safe termination or you miscarriage, you are going to be pregnant 24/7. And you have to give birth. Your baby has to come out of your body. And that baby is important to you. And your birth's important because you are going to be left with a birth story for the rest of your life. So are you preparing wrong for childbirth? No, the question is how to prepare right for childbirth. And what we're saying to you is birthing better, mothers and fathers, is become skilled. Now, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Lamaze and Bradley was around. We started to develop birthing better in the 70s and the 80s in the Pregnancy Academy for the skills dads developed for the 5 phases of pregnancy so they could get to 6 months of pregnancy, having this continuity of skilled self. And women can take the same course. And then we prepared our body for birth. Then we worked together through our baby's birth, no matter how. And we came out into parenting feeling confident, competent, and we had developed good teamwork. So we worked together better. There was zero downside to that. Zero. When we became skilled and had a continuity of skilled self, there was zero downside to it. The downside was when you think that you can just make choices about the type of birth you have and have spent 9 months in the black hole of pregnancy together. And the birth doesn't unfold the way you want because you never know what it's going to be like. And women after the birth say it was nothing like I imagined, right? And then you get spit out to take care of a kid. So for 20 years, from the 70s into the 90s, Birthing Better was the only skills-based course that was developing. But we couldn't train instructors to teach classes, and technology hadn't caught up to create a mixed media resource. That occurred in 2000. So for 30 years, I carried this stuff in my head. For you, why? I don't have a particular interest in how you have a baby. I care how I had my kids. But the fathers and mothers, the hundreds of them that I worked with, asked me to carry forward the skills that we were developing. And we developed lots of them. And why did we develop lots of them? Because people would come either going into birth and go, well, what can I do about? So, for example, I want to have a home birth. The doctor or the hospital won't let me. I have to go to the hospital. What do I do about that? Or we were answering questions after birth. Could I have done this or could I have done that? And both men and women were asking. So, for example, a guy sees his partner in pain and labor, and what does he do? He naturally reaches out and touches her, and she turns around to him and grouses at him and says, "Take your effing hand off me." And he does, but he then doesn't know how to come back and touch her again because the communication skills between them aren't good for that activity. So of course we develop communication skills. Or what are you saying in your head? I hate it, or I'm afraid of it. But then you can use skills and still have those thoughts going on in your head. That's really important. So when you're thinking about childbirth preparation, you have to understand that you are given 9 months, but you're not thinking about childbirth preparation really until about 24 weeks. And what happens? What's the magic time of 24 weeks? Your uterus is up at your navel, and you suddenly wake up in the morning and realize I'm more than halfway through my pregnancy. Right. So that's a good time. 36 weeks, if you're pregnant, 36 weeks and have no skills, learn them because you can. You just have to cram them in. If you're 40 weeks and don't have skills and want to learn some, cram them in. A lot of Birthing Better families develop skills the day before. Right. But what we want you to know is 24 weeks is really an ideal time to start with our resource. Since the 1990s, there have been more skills-based methods available. Hypnobirthing, hypnobabies, calm birth, birthing within. Those philosophically are all targeting natural birth, whatever that word natural means, good or bad. But it usually means a spontaneous delivery without what? Medical assessments or assessments of any kind, monitoring procedures. I don't know. That's up to you. And those are the things that you can put into your birth plan. But when Birthing Better first came out, it was called the Pink Kit, and that was 2000. And it was just the skills, body skills. But now we have all of the skills, the communication, the touch, the breathing, the soft skills, the body skills, the internal work. The internal work, if you're planning to have a vaginal birth, you need to prepare your baby's birth canal properly. It takes 5 minutes a day. Can you spare that from 32 weeks onward? The audio is for somebody to do it on you, your partner, and for you to do it on yourself, because there are some groups of people that women only do it on themselves. But men get this. If you say to a man, you've got an object this size coming through your penis, what do you think? And they, I mean, well, first of all, they go like that. And second of all, they go, I'd prepare that. You would. But women, it's happening inside our bodies. A lot of us as women don't have a clue. When I'm in traditional communities, people in traditional communities don't know they have a cervix. A lot of traditional communities don't connect sex to conception because it takes a long time to know you're pregnant. So when you're preparing for birth, you are preparing for a one-off activity, an infrequent activity, a dynamic, life-transforming activity that is called giving birth. What kind of a verb is that, giving birth? This is where the stork and the vegetable garden became a meme. You have to do the activity, and you will not know until it's over how it unfolded. However, you breathe in, you breathe out, your body is in some posture, some position, your head is thinking, and you can use skills. And that's what Birthing Better Families want you to know. We became skilled. We chose to become skilled to birth our babies, no matter how our birth was going to unfold. Because, what did I say in this? Our baby's birth is important to us. Our baby's birth is important to us. But then think about yourself as a pregnant woman. You're going to have that birth story the rest of your life. It's as simple as that. And you're going to tell it to people. If you're a father or other who's at a birth, you're going to have a birth story to tell for the rest of your life. What kind of a birth story do you want to tell? Do you want to tell a birth story based on your birth plan? What you got or didn't get? Because I can tell you, my generation had very little post-traumatic birth stress, or TABS, trauma after birth syndrome. But since birth plans became the norm and skills were intentionally removed, because cows and cats aren't taught, women don't need, and fathers shouldn't coach, they shouldn't tell women what to do. So we lost that connection of continuity of skilled self. And this has been an absolute disaster in childbirth. The rise of TABS, trauma after birth syndrome, has absolutely exploded. And anybody who suffers that knows it impacts them, their baby, their relationships, their families. Everybody is impacted by that. So we have to change our attitude. You get to help change it. And how do you get to do that? You need to tell yourself to become skilled and to have the person who's going to be with you to become skilled as your birth coach. And you need to tell everybody in your group and online. We need to grow a self-learning, skilled birthing population for all births. And how do you say that? 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth one way or another. And it's an activity each of us is going to do. And we can do a human activity better when we are skilled. So pick and choose what skills-based method you want. Do we want you to use our Birthing Better skills? Yeah, well, sure. We'd love you to. Why? Because they were developed by people like you, and they're for all births, and they've got a lot of different skills that you can learn. And it's amazing. In birth, we are sometimes told, get out of your thinking brain into your primal brain. No, you want to be in your thinking brain. Your primal brain is telling you what you think about it, which is, don't like it, it's painful, it hurts, they're doing this or that to me, or why isn't he helping me? But your cortical brain, that part up here where you have mastery of skills, is going, I'm going to breathe in, expand in my pelvis. I'm going to breathe out and soften in my pelvis. Am I open down there? They're doing these things to me. I still need to breathe. I still need to soften. He can help me or she can help me. And so you are going to pass on that message and you are going to help to grow a self-learning skilled birthing population. So what do we hope you got out of this? Are you preparing for childbirth wrong? You know the answer to that now. If you are not learning skills to do the activity of birthing your baby, yep, you're doing it wrong. Is writing a birth plan wrong? Of course not. What should you rely on? The choices or your competency? And that answer is the. Okay, so get to it, become skilled. You will always have an empowered birth, no matter how horrible it is, when you use skills. And if you're by yourself, use skills more deeply. Really, really honor this experience. Okay, see you next time. Bye bye.